I'm going to be learning too, and I'm not going to interrupt unless you need me. And at the end, I'll kind of open it up to questions and we'll rock and roll. If anyone virtually has any questions, you can't see anything. Sammy, just one more time, just double check. You can see the screen and you can hear her, correct? Yeah. All right, thank you. And just unmute yourself, guys, if you need anything. And let's maximize our time. Jenna Ciervo.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me today. So I'll just present something quick, and then you guys can ask me questions throughout, or feel free to interrupt and jump in. It's only about 10 slides. But I'm going to be giving you some tips for interviewing. So a little bit about me. You probably read my bio, so you know a little bit about me. So I graduated from Valhalla High School in 2013, and then I went to college at Albany College of Pharmacy and Health Sciences, where I graduated in 2019 with my doctorate of pharmacy. I went on to pursue postgraduate residency training, which is actually optional as a pharmacist. So I could have gone to like a CVS and done that, but I wanted to work in a hospital and be more clinical. So I went on to interview for a bunch of different residency programs, and I ended up matching in Philadelphia. So I went to Hospital University of Pennsylvania, which is affiliated with the University of Pennsylvania, the school. So I was there for a year, and then I wanted to pursue specialized postgraduate training. So my second year of residency, which I'm currently in at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in Manhattan. So I am finishing in June, and I'm currently interviewing for jobs at the moment. So a little bit about why you should actually take advice from me. So my career path has been a little different than other people. So I've interviewed at least 10 to 20 times because of residency training, because of first year residency training, second year, as well as jobs. So I do have a good amount of experience interviewing, and it is very specific to healthcare, but I think the same principles really tie in. So I'll be going over some of my tips and advice for how you guys should think about interviewing and what you should prepare for. So my tip number one is preparation. So you may hear some people say that it's not good to prepare for an interview, or you don't want to prepare too much. I think there is a good balance. So you do want to self-reflect, especially on what qualities you have, what strengths you have, what weaknesses you have. So I think that preparation and self-reflection is really key to interviewing. And again, you don't want to over prepare. You don't want to have a script that you're reading off of during interviews, especially now that it's virtual. It's very easy to have papers spread out in front of you, and having too much information can really make you seem robotic. So you don't want to have a script and over prepare. Additionally, you want to bring copies of your resume or CV and business cards if you have those to interviews. So I think it's always good, even if you send your resume out to your interviewers, you still want to bring copies, because some people may ask for them and write things on when you're in an interview. So I think it's always good to have those updated and bring copies with you. And also, depending on your job, you may want to put together a portfolio of some of the things you've done that relate to the job that you're interviewing for. So printing that out and having a folder that you can show if people do ask you about that. That is going the extra step. That's not typically required, but I think it's always good to think about, especially if you really want the job that you're interviewing for. I also think it's important to prepare your elevator pitch. So this is basically it's like a one-liner about who you are, where you've come from, what your interests are. So this is something that you definitely want to prepare, because you want to make sure that you're hitting your strengths and really your background and why you're interested in the interview. So I think it's always good to prepare your elevator pitch. And then some self-reflection questions that I just have on here to really ask yourself: what qualities do you have that make you a good candidate for the position? What strengths you have, as well as what weaknesses you have. And really, the weaknesses you can utilize to really bring out what you want to work on and how you want to grow as a person, or whatever job or school you're applying to. My next tip is dress to impress. So depending on what job you're applying to, the dress code's really going to differ, but it should always be appropriate. For example, I have an interview today, so I have a dress on and I'll probably put a jacket on. So mine's it's very professional, and because I'm in healthcare and things like that, but really dress to the level of your interview. Also, if you're going in person, for girls, wear comfortable shoes. So if you're going to wear heels, make sure they're a good height where you can walk in them, because you'll likely go on a tour or something like that. So make sure you have comfortable shoes on. And then the rules still apply during virtual interviews. So you want to make sure you're still dressing an appropriate level, and making sure that even though you're virtual, you still are appropriately dressed. My next tip is an interview goes both ways. So something that has helped me calm down in terms of interviewing, because I do get nervous, is that you already got the interview. So they know that you're qualified. And now it's your opportunity to really hit and highlight your strengths. And it's also an opportunity for you to ask questions to the interviewers. So it's both ways that you are interviewing for the position, but they're also interviewing you, or you're also interviewing them to see if this is what you want and whether it fits what you're looking for. So it's important to prepare questions for your interviewers regarding the position or the school or the job. And it's also, again, your opportunity to see if this fits what you want and what you're looking for. I know some of the interviews that I've been on this year looking for jobs, some of them haven't fit what I've wanted. And I know that by asking the right questions. My next tip is be on time. So it's always better to be early than late. Don't let this, be something that will make or break your interview or you're getting the job. Always be early and try not to be late. You should always plan ahead and factor in the possibility of traffic or getting lost and parking, things like that, if you do have interviews that are, farther from home. Tip number 5 is expect the unexpected. So unexpected questions are really meant to get to know you as a person, but they're also to test how you think on your feet. So a couple questions that I've gotten during interviews is, what do you like to do in your free time? Which is definitely an easy question to answer. I have also gotten, what was the last book that you read, or what was the last article that you read? And then some other unique ones that are really aimed at throwing you off are, name 5 uses of a pencil other than writing and erasing. So I personally didn't get this question, but one of my roommates in college got this during an interview. And we sat and tried to figure this out, and we couldn't even think of, I think we got 3. But yeah, that's a very interesting question to be asked in an interview. And then something a little pharmacy related is, they can ask you, if you were a medication, what medication would you be? Or if you were stranded on an island, what 3 medications would you bring with you? So those are some just off topic questions that I may have gotten asked, or, just expect the unexpected, because they're meant to throw you off and see how you can think on your feet. And then tip number 6 is be yourself. So really don't let your nerves get to you. Like I said, you already got the interview, so that you know that you're qualified. Now it's time to just let your personality show and relax. You should always be yourself. You should be excited and be interested, and also be confident. So I've also been on the alternative end of being an interviewer. So during my first and second year of residency, we help with interviewing the candidates that are coming next year. So something that I always would note is whether someone's personality was able to come through. And I think that's super important, especially with virtual interviews, because you're not spending as much time with people, and you really want to make sure that you come off as excited, you come off as interested, and your personality is really able to come through. And then also, don't forget to smile. People like when you're happy, they like to see you smile. Be yourself. And then this is just to wrap up some miscellaneous tips. So all the items or anything that you put on your CV or resume is fair game for questions. So you don't put anything on there that you're not able to speak to. So a lot of my CV is presentations that I've done, or lectures and things like that. So I make sure that I have actually done those presentations, because if I get asked them and I can't answer it, they're going to know that maybe it's a lie or something. So don't put anything on there that you can't speak to. And then it's also okay to take a few moments to answer, or to think about the question before you actually answer. So it's not wrong to take a few moments to really think about what you want to say and how to respond. And then it's also okay to ask a question to be repeated or clarified. So that's totally okay. And it's encouraged to ask for a timeline at the end of your interview. So if you're looking for, it's a good way to wrap up. Just say, is there any timeline that I should be expected? And they will give you, 2 weeks you should hear back, or something like that. And then it's also good to send follow-up thank yous. So either an email or a handwritten letter. So usually if you're, interviewing in person, they'll provide you with business cards or things like that. So always send a thank you email, and it's always appropriate within usually like 2 days. Don't go longer than like 5 days. And then lastly, you should always reflect after your interviews, and take notes at the end of your interview experience, not during. So we've had candidates that we've interviewed before that were taking notes during the interview, and it comes off as, not paying attention, not being interested. So just make sure that at the end you take some time to reflect and write down your thoughts, which will be helpful when you're responding with your thank you, like emails or whatever. And then lastly, to talk a little bit about the era of virtual interviews, since that's going to be probably something that happens for a few years after this. If not, like, it'll probably be a thing forever. But make sure you pick an area where you're not going to be interrupted. So don't stand near a door, or don't be near a door where your parents are going to come in or somebody's going to come interrupt you. Make sure you have a quiet space that you can reserve for yourself during the time. Always pick an appropriate background. So an appropriate space would be somewhere like a desk in an office, or at a table in your kitchen or something like that. It's inappropriate to sit on your bed, and also to have your kitchen like in the back of your view. One of the interviews that I was sitting in on, during a couple months ago, somebody was sitting with their kitchen behind them, and they had a bunch of dirty dishes, and it was like not a very appealing to the eye. So it's definitely want to make sure that you're in an appropriate space during your interview. Make sure your camera and microphone are functioning. So always test this out beforehand. Make sure you have, they can hear you, they can see you, and then make sure you have good internet connection. You don't want to be cut off during the interview, because then you really lose time. And that is the rest of that's it for my presentation. So I'll go back to any slides if you want, or if you guys won't have any questions. Thank you.
Right. All right. What I would do for you guys, first of all, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Why don't you guys jot something down that jumped out at you, or a question that you might have? Give yourself a little bit of think time for a second. I wrote a ton of stuff here myself. I just have this little platform here where I'm writing. And then you guys know me, I'm always going to have a million questions, but I actually don't want to use any time at all unless you have questions first. So let's give like a minute to breathe and get thoughts together. And then we'll start just peppering Jenna with questions. I do have a few questions. That was so good.
Yeah.
You have an interview today.
Yeah. At 9.
Oh my gosh.
It's I feel like I've done it enough where I'm not even like nervous at this point.
Yeah, that's impressive. I think that's something that they may want to. I definitely want to ask about that and whatnot. Let me move the microphone over here so they can. All right, so I'm happy to break the ice or open it directly up to you. I see a hand already, so we're good to go. Just project your voice, and then I'll let you know if she can hear you or not.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So one of the things you said was that it's important to like ask questions to the person that's interviewing you. Like, what like type of questions should you be asking?
So I kind of heard that. So it's basically like that question was, I said asking questions to your interviewers, and what kind of questions should you ask?
Yeah.
Okay. So it really depends on what like you're interviewing for. So if it's a school, you may ask about like involvement outside of like classwork, or if it's like a job, you may ask what other responsibilities are there outside of what you're actually going to be doing. Or you can ask something like a typical day for a pharmacist. That's something that I would ask. Like, what does your typical day look like? What other opportunities are there for precepting students or precepting residents? So it really depends on what you're interviewing for. And I think it's always good, to ask other people too, what they've, like, I always ask what questions other people have gotten, and like what questions I can ask. And it also depends on your audience. So I'll be also interviewing today with a physician as well as like some of the clinical directors. So my questions for that person are going to be a little bit different. They're going to be tailored to more of like, how do you utilize pharmacy in your practice, things like that. So it depends on your audience as well as what you're interviewing for.
I think that's helpful. Jenna, you said earlier a couple times when you were interviewing, you basically said that the questions you asked helped you realize it wasn't a fit. Can you remember any of those instances?
Yeah. So I think for oncology is what I'm interviewing for specifically. There's a lot of different areas within oncology. So what I like to ask is like what would my position focus on? And they would like tell me what like types of cancer they deal with. Also, what other responsibilities go into the job description. So whether it's more clinical, whether it's more of like a staff pharmacist position. So it's kind of the little details based on the experiences that I've had and knowing like what I want in a job. It has helped me really narrow down like whether I'm going to like a position or not.
I have two questions. That
Yeah, hit it. Let's start with one and see if they're unrelated. We'll come right back to you.
Okay, my first one is, can you give us an example of an elevator pitch? Because you mentioned that.
Yeah. So I think basically my about me slide was what I usually say during my elevator pitch. So I'll usually say, my name is Jenna Ciervo. I'm from Westchester, New York. I went to college at Albany College of Pharmacy and Health Sciences, graduated in 2019. I went on to pursue postgraduate training at the Hospital University of Pennsylvania, and I'm currently a PGY2 resident at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. My interests include hematologic malignancies and really looking for a job that fits like that area, as well as looking for growth opportunities. That's typically what I say in my elevator pitch.
What was the word you said about malignancies?
Hematologic.
Can you translate that? I don't know what that means. What does that actually mean?
It's like leukemia, basically. It's like a blood cancer, not a solid cancer.
Wow. You're tackling some hard stuff. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Liam's got a second question.
Okay. And can you give a future biomedical student or someone who wants to go into the medical field any tips?
In terms of interviewing or just general tips?
General, if that's all right.
Yeah, I think Liam has some interest in possibly being an anesthesiologist or other
Okay.
sorts of medical ideas. What can he do in the next 3 to 4 years to be thinking about being in your field or something like that?
Yeah, I think experience is going to be something that's very valued. I know it may be hard to get experience, but if you can volunteer at a hospital or volunteer somewhere in like the medical field, that's going to help differentiate you in terms of your application. I know like my boyfriend is interviewing for medical school, and he initially applied last year. He didn't have a job within the medical fields, and I think that really was what hindered his application. So I think experience is going to be key. So try to find volunteer opportunities within a hospital or something like that. And then really doing your research in terms of like pre-med, like what schools have good, or like ranked higher, things like that.
True or false? You have interviewed your boyfriend and he has interviewed you to practice.
False. He doesn't like to be interviewed.
and all jokes aside, based on your presentation, that tells me probably it's something that it would help him, right? It would help. I always tell them like it's super nerve-wracking to do a practice interview.
Yeah.
I imagine that's valuable. What else, guys? Don't let me get to the questions. You know I have them.
You do one.
Josh is about to do one.
Oh, Josh has a
Josh,
question.
got one?
It's just, what is a CV?
I
So-
wrote that down too.
So I don't remember what it actually stands for. It's like circumvallar or something like that. But it's basically, it's more in the medical field that you use it. It's more like detailed than a resume. So it has like my training on it, all my presentations, any like research that I've done, any like national presentations, my certifications. So it's similar to a resume. I think it's a little more detailed.
That was the one where you said you literally wrote down like what presentations you've done.
Yeah, I can project my screen if you want to
That'd
see
be great.
it.
Yeah, that sounds super impressive. Like don't think that's typical for a high school graduate.
Yeah, I've only like when I got out of high school, I just made a resume, not a CV. Here we go. I just have to find it.
It actually makes me think though, because as I try to do presentations, there's really nowhere where they're linked on my resume. So that would be something where I would consider that for sure. While Jenna looks for her CV, I want to ask you guys a question as a class. I'm curious so I can just speak for some of my students are seeing that, and I just saw one tear come down somebody's cheek, thinking that like they could never amount to that in their whole lives, even though I tell them they're amazing. I wonder, when you look at other people's CV, do you ever have that type of feeling of the imposter syndrome where you're like where is your confidence level on what you've done versus other people?
I feel like, the people that I work with at MSK are amazing. My preceptor is I look up to them so much, and they have accomplished so much. Being able to present nationally, the presentations that I have done are basically just to my co-residents and other pharmacists here. I have done some continuing education credits, which are required for getting licensed, but nothing like a national presentation. So I definitely it may look like I've done a lot, but there's people that have done much, much more. And I definitely feel the same way when I look at their CVs.
I have other questions, but you guys I can't see if you're raising your hand. Virtual learners, you can unmute and jump in as well. Go to Jasmine, and then virtual learners, just raise your digital hand and I'll go to you.
Well, I was going to say, going back to what you said about her being a student at Valhalla, have you always taught regular English?
Me?
Yeah.
I like to call this the superstar class, so I'm not sure what you're talking about. But I have taught, I've taught very few honors or AP classes.
Okay, so I'm going to assume she was not so great in English and
Whoa!
social studies.
Shots fired.
I was not good at English.
She struggled a little bit, but she excelled a lot in math and science, and that's where she got her love for going into pharmacy.
Jenna, what's the memory you have of yourself as a high school student?
I thought it was smart. I definitely was bad. I'm still bad at English. If I have to write a regular paper, I can't do it. I'm very bad at writing. And I remember writing my college essay, and you were I was in Mr. Ferraro's class, and I remember him being you need to work on this more. So I do still struggle with writing, but yeah, definitely stronger in math and science. I've always loved science.
I don't remember specifically the essay, but I'm sure I did it. That's so funny. But so I think what's notable about that though is that you were very comfortable giving a presentation to 25 strangers, and clearly you're comfortable giving presentations and very skilled at it. So how do you think about that in terms of your English skills now as an adult?
Oh, I definitely think, it comes with practice. I used to get really, really nervous when I presented, but I've done it so much now, especially this year, because we do a lot of different presentations. So I think you just practice makes perfect, and you gain confidence in learning how to present and being in front of large groups of people. I think one of the largest presentations I've done was 120 people. It was virtual given, but so it was a little less stressful, but.
And you have a job interview at 9 a.m. and you're here with us.
Yes.
No fear. You're just you have the link ready to go. You have your water next to you. You're all good.
Yep. Exactly. Yep.
Unbelievable.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Lead question.
I was gonna ask, does someone teach you how to write your CV or give you any examples?
Yeah. So typically I used examples from my friends who were older than me. So if I have students that I would probably share my CV with, and then I like to help review people's CVs, and there's different organizations that are within pharmacy that actually have you can send your CV to people to review it. So it's even I would recommend this for whether you make a CV or you have a resume, always have people look over it. You always want to make sure that you have the correct information, there's no typos, all the dates are correct. I remember looking at some CVs from people we interviewed, and they had the same years. You can obviously tell that it was incorrect because they had February 2020 instead of February 2021. So you want to make sure that there's no mistakes, and always have people review everything that you do.